Hello and a warm welcome back to the Pitchside Podcast. I'm host the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these podcast episodes you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts or any other platform. And follow us on social media. I'm at PSP on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram. Welcome to this episode 113 of the podcast. We're going to be covering the conclusion of the UEFA European qualifiers for the World Cup in its third round. Join us for more and you're welcome. So as I was saying, it was the conclusion of the UEFA European qualifiers for the World Cup, the first break of that, the conclusion of the third round of the campaign, and it was, pretty interesting in some ways. I mean, nothing really new, to be fair, in this third round, at least yesterday's result, but definitely there's one big result that's going to be the focus, I think, of everyone for the couple of days to come. And we start, of course, from Group B and the group of Spain. Greece had drawn against Georgia 1-1 in the second game, or the first game of that group, and then, of course, it was Spain versus Kosovo, and it was, despite the scoreline, despite what the scoreline might suggest, it was another, let's say, uncomfortable win for Spain. I mean, definitely dominated the possession as usual, had the more opportunities as usual, but definitely gave themselves a big scare in the second half. It was yet another change side from Spain, Eric Garcia and Inigo Martinez starting in the back, Marcos Llorente starting as a right back, and that might be another problem in the positioning for Spain, although he could play as a wing back pretty much, but it's not a side of Spain that plays with a 3 in the back. It's a 4-3-3. It's a classic Luis Enrique thing, and since the Barcelona days, to play with a 4-3-3, so it's not exactly a new formation as much as it is sort of a new usage of Marcos Llorente. Busquets in the middle as well, Pedri and Koke. I mean, it's a lineup that was a comfortable one to dominate a game like this. But definitely it wasn't exactly comfortable enough in the end. Kosovo gave them a big scare in the second half, particularly after the goal they scored. Spain went ahead in the first half thanks to Jordi Alba. And then assist from Jordi Alba, and the goal was, of course, from Dani Olmo. Ferran Torres managed to make it 2-0 inside 36 minutes. Quick fire double, really, from Spain. After the first half an hour, they couldn't really make a lot of opportunities. Pedri's assisting to Ferran Torres for the second goal, and it looked a safe space really for Spain in the first half. They looked like they will be heading towards a comfortable result by a big margin. But somehow they managed to give themselves a late scare in the 70th minute. The mistake from Unai Simon, taken very, very neatly by Besar Halimi from completely outside the box, like around 30-35 yards, and scooping it over the defenders to make it 2-1 for Kosovo. And after that, there was a bit of nerve from the Spanish camp, really. Gerard Moreno scoring the third goal to settle down things and make it 3-1 for Spain, giving them a comfortable victory in this group. I mean, definitely they needed the victory because, they needed a comfortable one as well because Sweden didn't play, so they needed to take the advantage of 1 point over them. And it would have been bad if they didn't win the game like this against Kosovo. All respect, really, but it's a winnable game for Spain in this group. I mean, overall, the 3 games for Spain were not exactly top-notch performances, really. I would say the first 2 games in particular against Greece and Georgia, I would say they were really, really hard games for Spain to win because they almost shot themselves in the foot. Particularly in the Greece case, they shot themselves in the foot pretty stupidly, I would say, by that penalty. They almost did that against Georgia, going down and having all kinds of struggles. The fact that Georgia were better than them in the first half of that game and all of that. Definitely, this was a victory that is well-deserved for the Spaniards, and absolutely, well-needed, I would say, and more than well-deserved, but well-needed for the Spaniards heading into the Euros, their last game pre-Euros, heading into the, the next, probably, World Cup qualifying stage in the, after that, those Euros, probably, they'll clash against Sweden, so it will be some interesting matches for the Spaniards as well to have, depending on their result in the Euros and how things are going to be shaping, and how the momentum is going to be swinging either in their side or not after the Euros. So overall, Spain leads the group now at the end of round 3 and the end of this international break. 7 points, 6 points to Sweden, 2 to Greece, 1 to Georgia, and no points for Kosovo. Hopefully the next game for Spain, it will be in the Euros. It will be against Sweden. They're drawn against each other in the same group as well as Poland. As far as the qualifiers are concerned, it's going to be a return in September after the in the mid-season, of course. To Group C and to Italy, and they managed to make it 2-0 again against Lithuania, making it, and another economic victory, the third win in a row in this campaign by 2-0. Fifth match in a row, in fact, winning 2-0. Like, it's ridiculous stats that I discovered actually yesterday. I was really not shocked, but somehow I didn't really believe it. The fact that that Italy defeated opponents 2-0 in 5 matches in a row. Like, that is actually what happened. Indeed it is, because the last 2 games before the campaign and before the World Cup qualifiers were in the UEFA Nations League, where they defeated Poland 2-0 and they defeated Bosnia and Herzegovina 2-0 away from home. So that is quite interesting, really. And not just that, like the fact that they defeated Bulgaria and Lithuania away, and matches that could have been tricky really on paper. It could have gone wrong really for Roberto Mancini, but definitely it was an important victory for them. The 2 goals coming in, in either side of, in the second half from Stefano Sensi in the 47th minute, and then of course Ciro Immobile very, very late on, managing to give Italy a 2-0 lead to leave Lithuania with the important 3 points. A game dominated by Italy, but for the most part they were unable to truly convert the chances that they have. They had a lot of opportunities, particularly in the second half, and eventually they got 2 out of them. I mean, it could be a problem really when you have like 9 shots on target and only convert 2, because that in the Euro is gonna be really, really bad. You look at it from a perspective of Italy. They're drawn in a group with as Turkey and Switzerland in the Euro. They're not exactly in the easiest. Sort of company there. Like, these are tricky games to play, and if they're going to be missing chances against those kind of opportunities and against those kind of opponents, it wouldn't be exactly a comfortable campaign for them in the Euros, and they won't have exactly the hope to go very, very far in that competition. Now, I mean, overall in those 3 rounds, I think Italy were probably the most consistent side. I mean, they had the same sort of performance for the 3 games. I mean, the only side to do so, I think, in my opinion. They have the consistency in result, but they don't have the consistency of the performance, maybe. Depending at least on what you saw before the qualifiers. But in the 3 matches of the qualifiers, I thought they were pretty consistent, they were pretty effective, pretty economic, realistic. The same result, pretty much the same, sort of scenario, taking 2-0 lead and, not exactly converting all of opportunities, but managing to keep themselves well drilled in the back, keeping the clean sheets, defending really well. Now it's 25 games in a row for Roberto Mancini's squad not losing, and they have, they're really having the options, but obviously, the squad is pretty interesting. You look at the likes of Emerson Palmieri, Lorenzo Pellegrini, Locatelli, Matteo Pessina. Look at the back, you have Alessandro Bastoni, Mancini, and Toulouse. You have a pretty young squad. Aside from Ciro Immobile and Stefano Sharawi, I would argue this is a pretty fresh and young squad that the Italians have. Alongside Norway, I would say is a pretty promising squad for the future. It could go for 5, 7, 10 years maybe. This squad, really, you look at some of the players, it has Alessandro Bastoni certainly could do that distance. Also, Emerson Palmieri could be a good hand for the national team for the next couple of years. Lorenzo Pellegrini, Manuel Locatelli, Matteo Pessina. Of course, you have Barella, who was a substitute in the game, and he was the man who drawn the penalty. He's an incredible name in that Italian squad, and he would be something in the Euro. I'm really waiting for the Euros from the Italian point of view to see him, play and see him perform as one of the best midfielders in the world. I really love watching him play. He's an incredible talent, and he might be this you mean next generation Pirlo, I think, in Italy, or next generation Gattuso in Italy. I mean, someone of that ilk, really, in that midfield, if he manages to keep his consistency up in the next couple of years and in the Euros. Again, definitely interesting situation for Italy. They're completely bossing the group, no doubt about it. 9 points out of 9, 6 goals and 0 goals conceded, 3 clean sheets in a row. 6 points for Switzerland behind them, who played only 2 games. Northern Ireland drawn against Bulgaria 0-0, winning their first point in the group. 1 point for them, 1 point for Bulgaria, and Lithuania with 0 points. To Group D now, and it's the group where France went away to Sarajevo to face Bosnia and Herzegovina in an interesting situation, really interesting game for Les Bleus, and they managed to, to squeeze a victory, I would say. There's no description really that could fit this performance from France better than squeezed out a victory, because that's what they did, really. They were not that good. I mean, if you compare them to the other teams, the other big teams sort of playing on the night, I would say they had the least convincing performance to their win. I mean, another team probably had another less convincing performance, but they got the right result for it. But definitely France, for a win, I think they were the least convincing ones. Overall, they returned and they reverted to the side that they started with in the first game against Ukraine, reverting to the back four with Benjamin Pavard, Varane, Lucas Hernandez. Of course, no Longley, it was Brisson Kimpembe starting. Rabiot, Pogba, Kingsley Coman, and Thomas Lemar, no Conte in the side. And I thought, why would that not happen? Why you don't play Conte? I don't exactly think that Rabiot has a better performance than Conte this season, with Chelsea, Kylian Mbappe and Antoine Griezmann up front, and this was another middling performance really from France. Like, aside from the fact that they scored a goal in the second half, they had, a better second half overall. I didn't think that the first half was that good from France. The overall performance was not that good against a Bosnian side that was setting up for themselves really well in the 3-5-2, defending in a decent way, really defending really compact, not allowing a lot of space, if any at all. Like, they only found space when when Didier Deschamps made the substitution to get Giroud in onto the pitch, and he opened the space pretty quickly for Antoine Griezmann to move inside the box and heading the ball into the net for a 1-0 lead for France. And after that, really, there was nothing. There was really, really nothing. Like, France didn't create a lot of opportunities, if any, and they were pretty slow and lethargic. They couldn't move the ball pretty quickly. They couldn't find the spaces. Kylian Mbappe wasn't exactly moving very well in that more central role. I mean, once Giroud got in, he was moving better in that wide position. Antoine Griezmann, I think, was probably the best man on the pitch, not just because of the goal, but he was, compared to the others, he was pretty quick and pretty dynamic into that French lineup. Definitely an interesting situation, with France heading into the Euros. I mean, at least they got the win, which is, something that they want to do. Of course, they want to leave on a high. That's not exactly the highest of points that you could reach. Not the best of performances, surely. Definitely something going to be concerning before the Euros. The group ain't easy at all, Germany and Portugal, but I think when we get to Germany, we're going to be talking about their own worries themselves. But obviously, France winning is always going to be a good thing for them, and they're always going to take it as a positive, whatever the performance it is. They won the World Cup by being by being pragmatic and by being slow and defensive, really, for the most part. But this is a game where you need to attack, and France didn't attack well. They didn't look convincing in any of their 3 games, and that might be a little bit off-putting for them before the Euros. Of course, I mean, they need all those big names in the Euros, ready and firing on all cylinders, because they want that trophy. They want to maybe redeem themselves from what happened in 2016 when they lost it on their home soil to Portugal. So France, of course, defeating Bosnia and Herzegovina 1-0, and the other game of the group, Ukraine defeated Kazakhstan, or drawn against Kazakhstan 1-1, which makes the standing of the group as at the moment as it is. 7 points for France, Ukraine with 3 points, Finland with 2 points, Bosnia and Herzegovina with 1 point, and Kazakhstan with 1 point. I mean, Ukraine, by the way, to be fair to them, they could have, they could have really had 6 points. They could have been a joint top with France on 7 points had they managed to keep their lead intact in both the game against Finland and Kazakhstan. I mean, both games they dominated, both games they played better, but somehow they didn't manage to keep the lead anyway. Before we move on to Group I and talk about England, let's go to Group F quickly and talk about their results in Group F. Of course, it was Austria losing to Denmark 4-0 at home, Israel defeating Moldova 4-1 away from home, and Scotland defeating Faroe Island 4-0 at home. The standings of this group at the moment: Denmark with 9 points, Scotland with 5, Israel with 4 points, Austria with 4 as well, Faroe Island with 1 point, and Moldova with 1 point. Pretty impressive stuff from Denmark over the last 3 games. 9 points, 14 goals, and no goals conceded. The strongest attack by far in this campaign. That is pretty impressive for them, and they could be quite something really heading into the next World Cup, because I'm assuming they will be the ones qualifying straight to the World Cup from the top position. Moving on to Group I now, and it's the group of England. The game between them and Poland is the biggest focus, I think, on this one. Andorra defeated or lost to Hungary 4-1 at home. San Marino lost to Albania 2-0 at home. And then, of course, between that, it is England versus Poland 2-1. For England at home. It was the hardest game of the 3. Obviously, everybody knew that, but I think a Poland side that was entering this one without Lewandowski because of the injury, and I mean, let's not really get started about how bad this injury will be for Bayern Munich down the line, but a side without Lewandowski, without that focal point in attack, Paulo Sousa had to make, substitutions, had to make changes for his side, set up himself in the 3-5-2 kind of situation. Krzysztof Piątek and Swiderski starting both as the partnership in the attack, where it usually would be one or the other starting alongside Lewandowski, but it was, the two starting on the day. England started with pretty much the same side they started with in the second game. Really, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice, Mason Mount were there, Harry Kane was there, Phil Foden as well. And, it was pretty interesting to see England, struggle on this one, because after the first 2 games were strolls in the park and walks in the park for the most part, the third game against Poland was, definitely, I think, the most stir test of the 3, because they didn't create a lot of opportunities really to score. They dominated, yes, but they were not exactly effective. They only managed to score thanks to a penalty, brought and drawn down by Raheem Sterling, scored by Harry Kane in the 19th minute, but after that, it looked like they played a very slow game, which wasn't the same situation in the first couple of games against San Marino and Albania. I mean, obviously the comparison and the difference, I think, in opponents is pretty staggering when you compare England and Poland to England versus San Marino or England versus Albania. Poland, to be fair, were pretty content with the point. After the goal they scored, capitalizing on a defensive mistake by John Stones. That is, might be a worry in itself down the line, considering the Euros. 58 minutes in, Jakub Moder equalizes for Poland, capitalizing on that mistake, as I mentioned. And after that, Poland had a bit of a good spell. Really, they were better. After that goal, they managed to create a couple of situations where they could have been more dangerous. They could have even scored the second, really, on a couple of situations had the finish or the last touch been better. And definitely England tried as they might to score the second goal. They didn't have a lot of opportunities to do that, but once they got the chance in the 85th minute, it was Harry Maguire, of all people, coming in with the winner by the assist of John Stones, a set-piece drill working wonders from the England side. 2-1 it ends for the Gareth Southgate outfit, against Poland. An important victory, 9 points out of 9. Perfect start for the campaign for them. Of course, I'm not exactly worried that they're going to be qualifying, because I know that they will be qualifying, top of the group. To be fair, it doesn't look like they will lose that spot unless they slip somehow in another game against Poland or against Hungary, because I don't see them really losing to Andorra or to San Marino. But they still have enough in them, I would say, to make you excited and make you worried in the same time heading into the Euros. Obviously, Gareth Southgate has the luxury of choosing, because he has a lot of options, and some of them are not even fit at the moment to play with the England squad. They could be ready by the time the Euros come around. Of course, I'm talking here about the likes of Maddison, the likes of Jack Grealish. They could be really ready for the Euros, and it'd be really interesting to see how he's going to be choosing the players that are going to be exactly playing in the Euros. At the moment, England with 9 points, as I mentioned, Hungary 7 points, 6 points for Albania, Poland with 4 points, Andorra and San Marino with no points. With San Marino with no goals scored, really. They're pretty miserable side to watch in Europe. I really feel sorry for them every time I see them play. I mean, good start for England, and we'll see how they're going to be doing in the rest of that campaign, and obviously heading into the Euros. Finishing off and rounding off the conclusion of round 3 of these qualifiers and Group J, and I think the result that, was the most shocking, I think, of the whole international break, with Germany losing to North Macedonia, but of course elsewhere in that group, Armenia managed to defeat Romania 3-2, coming back actually from a 2-0 to 1 lead from Romania. Of course, Armenia led 1-0, and then Romania managed to make it 2-1. Then Armenia managed to make another comeback late on in the game, in the last 5 minutes, scoring 2 goals to make it 3-0. Armenia are surprisingly enough the top side in the group with 9 points. Like, from all the sides that I would expect to make a shock top into the group after those 3 first games, I really didn't see Armenia doing that. And they might believe that they actually could go to the World Cup and have the right to do that. I think it's a pretty legitimate right for any team in the world to think about that, but it's really surprising, and it might just be a really interesting story growing up in these World Cup qualifiers. Pay attention to that, because it could really be some story eventually. I mean, maybe they would go through the playoff system, who knows. 3 victories out of 3, it's pretty interesting. Salute to Armenia, shout out to them, by the way. Liechtenstein lost to Iceland 4-1, of course, expectedly, I would say. Iceland, after losing the first 2 games, yes, they should win against Liechtenstein anyway. 4-1 it was. I mean, finally they grabbed 3 points in this campaign. A team that couldn't grab 3 points nor make a perfect start with 3 wins out of 3 was Germany, and it was the result that I think shocked the European football scene to the core, really, yesterday, losing to North Macedonia 2-1. But obviously this is not the story really in the game. I mean, this is literally North Macedonia scoring a goal in either side of halftime in either side of halftime, really, scoring late in the first half, scoring late in the second half, and between that, Germany, wasn't exactly effective. I mean, it's as simple as that. When you have 1 shot on target in the first half and 1 shot on target in the second half, and you're Germany, with the amount of talent that you have, it's really not effective. I mean, for the first half, really, it looked like Germany were trying to pass the ball into the net. They weren't trying exactly to score as much as they wanted to. They tried to pass the ball into the net. It didn't look exactly convincing. They were missing a lot of opportunities to make another decision, really. Not exactly scoring opportunities, because they had only 1 shot on target and was saved by the goalkeeper. Goretzka hit the bar so early on, so you thought that Germany are going to be dominating and are going to be eventually scoring, but that didn't happen. North Macedonia played a well-drilled defensive game, didn't allow Germany the space that they want to. No runs were being made, really, from the German side. I mean, North Macedonia was squeezing the Germans into the midfield, and to be fair, they played them like a fiddle in the first half, mostly. I mean, after the first quarter of an hour or so, I thought the game tempo was pretty slow from the Germans, and they couldn't muster a lot of opportunities to score the first goal. North Macedonia capitalized on the first true mistake, I would say, in the back from Germany. Bad marking, Enisbadi taking the ball down and, bringing it to Goran Pandev. And in that position, in the 6-yard box without marking, it's almost impossible. What are the odds, really, that he misses a chance like that? Well, he didn't, but someone else did, on the other side. Goran Pandev gives North Macedonia the lead 1-0 at the break, and it was pretty nervous nervy. I mean, for a moment there, for a couple of minutes in the start of the second half, it looked like Germany might struggle with equalising. Eventually, they did from the penalty spot. Thanks to Leroy Sané, who I thought was the best, I think, German player in the whole 3 games, really, alongside maybe Kimmich and Goretzka, really. I mean, Gundogan managed to equalise, and after that, the real struggle began. That's where the real struggle began. When Germany started, throwing all weapons out, going all guns blazing, looking for the second goal, making the changes, making the substitutions, they missed a lot of opportunities. They didn't present themselves with the best of situations really to score. Timo Werner missed a couple of opportunities, including a glorious one late on in the second half in the 79th minute to make it 2-1, and I think probably most of the Germans are going to be looking at that chance, and I would say, that's the one where Germany lost the match really, because a golden chance like that, it was set up perfectly by Ilkay Gundogan. He was in the 6-yard box almost, and he managed to scuff it, outside of the post. It was incredible. It was gag worthy. It was meme worthy moment, I would say, from Timo Werner. I mean, that might put a lot of criticism on him, and it would already add to the already inflaming social media criticism for him at Chelsea and at his season at Chelsea, which didn't get off to the best start. So it looks like he will add more criticism upon himself with this glorious opportunity being missed. And of course, on the other hand, North Macedonia in the 85th minute, managing to punish Germany basically for their ineffectiveness, scoring the second goal by Eljif Elmas from another defensive, atrocious mistake, I would say, in terms of marking. Really, Eljif Elmas was pretty much free to take the shot. It took a slight deflection and, took it away from Ter Stegen. A 2-1 result. North Macedonia with a historic victory, and I think that is completely deserved against the German side that were not effective, that were not really playing to their strength. So, I mean, this would put a lot of pressure on Germany, a lot of pressure on Joachim Low, adding to the one that he had already, and also ahead of the Euros. That might be a really worrying sign, both defensively, the fact that they don't have the best of defenses going on, and also not the best of attacks, because they don't have a focal point, they don't have a centre forward who could turn those chances in, because playing with a false nine like Gnabry or like Werner at the moment, and Werner is exactly doing the bidding, it doesn't look like Germany are going to be in a poor position really in the Euros. And with the group that they have, France and Portugal in it nonetheless, it will be pretty hard for the Germans to deal with that. At the moment, Armenia leading the group with 9 points. Again, shout out to them. 6 points for North Macedonia, 6 for Germany, and third on goal difference. 3 points for Romania, and Iceland and Liechtenstein with 0 points, of course. That's it from me for this episode. Thanks for watching / listening. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast. Listen to that on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform, and follow us on social media. I'm at PSP on Twitter, Pitch on Instagram, and until next time, I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.